Today's episode is sponsored by Dancesoft Gamers. Dancesoft Gamers is the leading distributor of video games and other consumer gadgets like the podcast microphone sets, ring lights, headphones, and affordable smartwatches, and many other cool gadgets. For these and more, visit their website at www.dancesoftgamers.co. That is www.dancesoftgamers.co. Today, I'm excited. I'm excited for this recording uh, with a lady, Jacqueline. She's an engineer, and I've followed her on Instagram for a little bit now. I still don't know how we got connected. I'm gonna ask her. That's one of the things I'll ask. See how she connected to my podcast. But I followed her for a while, and she does an amazing job. And every time I look at somebody on Instagram or any other social media, and I see the work they do, I and I'm passionate about hard working. So I was like, you know what? I need to sit down with Jacqueline and have a conversation with her. So she's a registered engineer. She does construction, and she's helping you with designs and build your dream home for the people in Uganda. So construction management and supervision, and she has her number on there, and you can connect with her on there. Mujevale, Mujevale, Mujevale. My name is Bane Kibuka, and welcome to another episode of the Ugandan Ball Talk Show. Let's check in and see where Jacqueline's at. Yep, she's right here. She's in the building. Jacqueline is in the building. Yep, we about to get started. Hey, there you are.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Hopefully everything is set. I was just here. Nowadays I like to come into the Zoom and just wait for the guests to be here, because that way I'm prepared and I just wait to welcome them in here.
Yeah.
How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm all right. Just on site,
Yeah.
but I'm in the site office, just checking up on a few things before I go back home.
You work through the weekend too?
Yeah, because I have a 9 to 5.
Okay.
So I usually do my own jobs on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. We're gonna get into all that, but welcome to my podcast.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored.
I was just talking to the listeners, and this is something I've started. Like when I start the recording, I talk a little bit about the person I'm gonna host. When I as you guys get ready to connect. But I was talking to the you didn't hear this part because you're not connected yet. But I was talking about how I found you on Instagram, and I'm gonna ask you about how we got connected or how you found me the first time. But I
Okay.
I mentioned that your work ethic, like I ever since I followed you, like just watching your work, and that drives me when I look at somebody's work ethics and their hard work. I'm like, I need to sit down with this person and just have a chat with them about their hard work and their love and everything that you do and passion that you put in your work. But before we go into all that, I just want you to introduce yourself to my listeners.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. I'm Jacqueline Nakitto. I'm a chartered engineering technologist in the UK and also registered in Uganda. I run the page Build with JK. It's all about construction. It's basically showing you the behind the scenes of the pretty pictures that you see on Instagram, on the internet, the finished houses. So I take you behind the scenes and show you how we get there through the whole process. Yeah. That's what I do. I've been in the industry for over 10 years now. So I really decided to venture out on my own and use my experience and share what I've had with people on the internet, and also share what I do for my clients in the construction industry.
I like it in this 21st century, like we have some of us, not everybody, but some of us have decided to use the social media for a good cause, to promote the work, to let people know about stuff. Like you're doing construction, I'm doing a podcast, people are doing a bunch of different things, selling stuff online. So I like it when I see that in this generation we're using internet for good cause, whereas there's some other people who use the internet for bad cause too. So I like that we chose to do this. So Jacqueline, where were you born? And I know from your introduction, and you say you're in Uganda and you work in the UK. Wakuzalawa.
Banzala wani Kampala so.
Okay. Some people
Yes,
get
I'm from
surprised when
Uganda.
I speak Luganda because they think I forgot Luganda once I left Uganda. But I like to throw it in just there once
Yeah.
in a while. Where in Kampala?
Yes, Kampala in Kazo. So yeah, that's where I'm born, and I'm born to my mom and my dad who are still there
Okay.
in Kazo. So I was there, grew up there, studied there in around Kampala for most of my education. I've
What
been
schools
around
did you go
Kampala.
to? Like primary, high school, and university?
Primary school, I went to Lohana Academy,
Rohana Academy. I
and
think
then
I
I
know that.
did I went to Linet,
Okay.
and then in high school I went to Makerere College School
Okay.
for my O level, and then my A level I went to Caltech Academy.
I think I actually, funny thing, I think I know all the schools you've mentioned, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't bet myself on that. But yeah, I think I know all the schools you went. And then you say so for your A level you went to Caltech Academy. How about university?
University, I went to Kampala Polytechnic, Mengo, for my ordinary diploma in architecture draftsmanship.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I went UTC Busheng.
UTC chain. No, I don't. Those are the last where you did your architectural work. I'd not heard of those. But yeah, so basically today, as I've mentioned in the beginning, I really love your work ethic. I really love the your career, and we're gonna walk through that just to pick your brains and just to help the listeners
Okay.
to know about. I don't know anything about construction, but I love it. And I guess every time I watch,
Okay.
I sit down and I watch all your reels, like when you're walking through something, like, hey, you're planning on building a house. These are the steps you need to. So some of us don't know that, and some of the listeners may be wondering, maybe wanting to know. And today we have the Jackie, the construction genius. So she's gonna answer all my. I represent the audience with my questions. But before I go
Okay.
into that, what made you want to choose construction? Like, is it something you've always wanted as a young lady or as a young child? Like, you were like, oh, I'm gonna be an engineer in construction, or how did it come up?
Funny enough, I really, really wanted to be a doctor. Like, I really, really wanted to be a doctor. So I was going in that direction of, studying to be a doctor, taking all the subjects to be a doctor. But then when I finished my A levels, I didn't perform so well in chemistry. I'm not so good at chemistry.
Me too.
So I figured, you know what? Yeah. Yeah, I figured like, okay, so if I'm to continue in the medical field, I'm most definitely not going to get what I want because I'm not so good at chemistry. And then my next option was going into, architecture, or because I knew if I took that path, it would lead me down engineering. I've always wanted to do it. I've always had a love for putting things together,
Mhm.
especially with our home where we lived.
Yeah.
I was always going through the layouts, the plans, and I was discussing with my dad because it was always, it was basically through my childhood, they were constructing it as we went along. And I was
Mhm.
always interested. So I was like, you know what, I'd love to do this. And if there is an opportunity for me, why not? I can, shift. And that's something that I learned at that time, that
Yeah.
it's okay to be flexible. You don't have to, stick it in here. But if you don't know chemistry, you're not good at chemistry. You're not good at chemistry. So, and I was good at all the other things. Yeah.
That was me with chemistry.
So that's how
I wasn't good with chemistry. I wasn't good with biology. And the good thing for me, I never had being a doctor in my head. Like that was out of the picture for me. Like I never even dreamt about it. I never even wanted it. I never, because I knew my struggles with chemistry. And once I finished Form 4, I'm like, yeah, thank God, I'm done with it. Actually, I dropped chemistry in senior one. Like me and some of my friends in senior one were like, no, this is not for us. So we stopped going to classes. I'd say we just didn't care. But God helped me and I didn't fail at senior four for my results. But yeah, so some of the things like there isn't a lot of like female engineers, like especially in Uganda. I mean, if you go abroad around the world, you might find a lot of them. But like in a country like Uganda, we grew up thinking that maybe that's a man job. Like that's only men are on the sites to do the jobs. But here you are coming up with this. How have you wanted like to be the female engineer? Like even you can be on a site and you might testify on that, and all the people that are working there are men and you're running the project. Like how was that like, and how has that helped you as a woman working in that area?
Well, that's one of the things in engineering. You always walk into a room and you're always the only one. You're the only female, and sometimes also the younger female. So you're always the youngest sometimes, and you're also the only female. And you're in a room with, it's been a challenge, especially in site meetings. There's always the banter, the back and forth. And at the beginning, it's quite discouraging and disheartening. But I've found women along the way who have mentored me and held my hand. And now I'm no longer actually, I'm not intimidated entering into those rooms where there's all these men. So now I know how to, let's call it, play the game. Yeah. So now I know how to play the game, how to conduct myself, what to expect. I think it comes with experience,
that I feel like it comes with experience, and it also comes with knowing what you're doing, because nobody's gonna intimidate you when you know what you're doing. Like you don't care whether it's a man or whether it's an old person, whether if you know what you're doing, like the confidence you have in what you do, like nobody will intimidate you over that.
Yeah.
That comes with that too. When was the first, and how was your experience with your first ever project, if you can remember it? Like your first project, how was that like going into it?
A gentleman, one of my mentors, he's called Johnson, gave me an opportunity to draft up a plan for him. He gave me his laptop. At the time, I didn't have a laptop. He gave me his laptop and he's like, okay, this is what I want. Can you do this for me? I was so scared, but I went on. I did it. And after I did it, he gave me 50,000. I'll never forget the first 50,000 that I made. So that was my very first project. So yeah, that was the first one. That was the first one. I'll never forget that. Yeah, I got 50,000 of that. And I was like, okay, so can make some money.
The reason why I like to ask people about like something like that, it's because people today will come to your page, like right now, they'll go to your page and see what you're doing, where you are, and they're like, oh, Jackie Amala, yo, like she's doing that. But I want to ask those questions at the beginning so people can know, like, no, not everything you see right now was like that. At one point, I started without a computer. At one point, I got 50 like thousand or like this amount of money, because people might think like, oh, so you're making a lot of money, or but at one point at the beginning, it's not always going to be pretty. So you have to like work, like take time. So when you have worked with this, actually, there's one of the questions actually you just posted it. When was it? Let me see. 3 days ago. And if I found it interesting, like one of the person that asks you, like, I have 3 million Uganda shilling. I want to buy a land and I want to build a house. And I like the way you talked about that on Instagram, but can you walk us through about that situation or scenario for the listeners who have not seen this? Like I want them to hear about that scenario of somebody, they have money, we have like, oh, we have 30 million, but they want to buy the land and they want to build a house. How do you help somebody in that scenario?
So usually somebody comes to me and asks, I have 30 million for that post. How do I buy land and how do I construct? And most of the times you find that 30 million is not enough to buy land and to construct, because construction costs a lot more than people actually have in their mind. So usually for that amount of money, what I advised that follower is to buy 2 plots of land. So if you could go out of CBD, let's say about 25 kilometers or
what
28
is CBD?
kilometers.
Because in the US, CBD stands for something different.
Business district.
To what?
Yes, Central Business District.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's say about 25 kilometers or 28 kilometers. Let's say, I'll give an example in Busika, which is a bit far away from CBD. So if you get 2 plots, about 15 million each, so you get 1 plot, do your plans for it, and you could start with getting material onto your site, because something as little as 150,000 or 200,000 will get you a trip of cement. And sometimes people are worried they'll steal my material, but that's really usually not the case. All you have to do is protect it against weather so that it doesn't run off. So every time you get 200K or 150K, you take your sand, you take your bricks, because it could be as little as 200K. You take your bricks, you take your sand, you take your stones over time. So that way you are saving basically in terms of material. So when you do that with your bricks, stones, sand, then you can start depositing money with a trusted hardware shop that there are hardware shops now which have these systems. Yeah, so you can start depositing on your cement. And usually I encourage my clients to have their projects costed. That way, I need a certain number of bags of cement, this number of iron bars, this number of, all those things. So you can start depositing on those things. And it usually takes a while, depending on your income. So if you have, deposited on all of those, let's say it will take you about a year to have all that ready. Then within the second year, you can start going on site and you start, constructing. You go phase by phase as you get your labor. So it's a process. So by the time you go through that process and you get, to roofing, you've roofed your house, you've plastered. Now, there is always the tricky part about finishes. Yeah. Almost everyone I've met underestimates finishes, but they are actually the biggest part of any project. They seem to be small, but they are intricate, and they take, the labor is more, the cement is more. You have different people doing different things. So it takes a little bit more.
When you say it takes a little bit more, does it take a little bit more money or more time, or both?
It takes both more money and more time. So then I advised like the second, because within maybe 2 years, 3 years, it has gained a little bit more value. So she can put it on the market and sell it. Because if she bought it, let's say at 15 million, and let's say we give it a small margin of, a small margin of, what do they call it? Gaining in value. So let's say she sells it at 20 million shillings can do something for you on your finishes, so you can actually make the house habitable. Just like I shared in that post, not everyone is able to, garner up all the funds that are required to finish the house. But sometimes you have a house up to a certain level and you feel like you can, enter into this house, but you just don't know how to go about it. So one of the things we look at the critical things. So there are about 4. So first and foremost, you need to have a working toilet. So it's okay if you don't have, the whole drainage, the septic tank. You can have a pit latrine. I mean, we all
Yeah, the
we've used pit
outside
latrines
one.
before. Yeah. So if you can have, one pit latrine working, then good. You can, do the drainage later on. And then the electricity, if you don't, because getting electricity with umeme is an uphill task. So what I usually advise people is to get a solar system, about 5 lights. These days, they are subsidized. You can pay daily until you complete paying it. So, and it gives good light. So that's the second thing. Then the third is the floors. So one of the things you don't want to compromise a lot about is the floors. You don't want to get in when the floor is not up to a certain level, because it will bring dust mites, and you get sick in the process. So what I usually advise people is, if you've done the screeding, then you can do, the plastic carpets. We've all seen plastic carpets before, so it should be okay.
I used them before when I was in Uganda.
Yeah, so you can do the plastic carpets, and then with water, you can do the rainwater harvesting, in a tank, the mini tank, you can use that as well. And then you need to have the glasses in. You can't compromise on that. So if you could get the glasses in and all your doors are in, and then you plaster the inside of the walls. When you plaster them, you can use undercoat. These days, let's say Plascon does really good undercoat that you can actually, it's as good as paint. It's just white. Yeah. So those are the things that you can consider, and you're good to go. Yeah.
So in America, I've done a little bit. I've not done construction, but I've done like remodeling houses, like painting and they have like codes, like water codes, electrical codes. When I was growing in Uganda, nobody was mentioning those things. I mean, I think because I wasn't in construction, but is that something it's people focus on?
Yes, we do. We have building codes here within Uganda, building regulations that we follow. They're the same that we follow when you submit your plans to the council to get them approved. You have to follow those building regulations and codes. And then we also do the British standard, the BS. So there's also a Euro code. And then for mechanical, we have ASHRAE or SIBC. Then the electrical also have the EIA. So yeah, we work to codes, yes.
When I was young, when they call us to go Kupota, you never hear anybody mentioning about codes. Just let Moiko, let Biriji, and then they just put bricks together.
Yes. Actually, you'll find that in the consult. I think one of the things that I'm fortunate to have is to have worked in consultancy and then also construction. And in consultancy, it's where you have all these codes. And I've been fortunate enough to work on high-rise buildings, big projects. And then you realize when you get down to constructing a residential homes and smaller homes, it's a different system. People work differently, so you actually have to get accustomed to what actually happens on ground in residential homes, in smaller projects. You're not going to bring the big codes from the big buildings, and then you put them to the smaller homes. So you have to learn how to condense, and that comes as you do more and more of these projects.
Yeah, it was funny because after I came to America, I mean, and we learn these things when you travel and see how people do different things around the world. It reminded me when I was growing up, when I was younger, I would go up in our ceilings And now electricians like literally just use like a plastic bag around the wires, just like connect the
Yeah.
wires of like if you do that here, like, you get in trouble. They'll find you and they'll like, why did you do this?
Yeah.
And that brings me to one tweet you shared on your story too from I think it was IGP. Yeah, IGP about in you and I've shared this before, I think a while back about twagala into be aware or be allies like how can I make it cheaper or like and if a person like you who is an engineer like gets into that like how can I make it cheaper for this person, it might be expensive in the long run, and that brings me to saying cheap things are expensive. Like how have you dealt with that in the situation of clients want cheaper things?
Yes, that is actually something I have to deal with on a daily, especially when it comes to quotations. Because usually the builders who are in the field, they underquote. And when you underquote, it's basically trying to get the client to commit. So if say you tell a client, oh no, this is going to cost about 5 million shillings, the client's like, okay, I can do that. I can do that. So they get in, and after they get in, then the builders start bringing up what you'd call variations. Oh, we need more bricks. Oh, we need more sand. We need more cement. And sometimes it gets people into debt, especially if they're not prepared. If they came in with a mindset of 5 million and yet it's going to cost 20 million shillings. So that's something that I don't do personally. I get less work, but I don't do that because it's a very dangerous thing.
Yeah.
So it's basically my quotations for the client and I take them through and I make sure that if there are any variations, they're between 10% of what is quoted. So they also rest easy. They know that I need this amount of money. This is actually what it really costs. And I think that's where the issue is. What is the real cost for clients who are ready to take that? Then they always get their projects out. And for those who are not ready, you tell them, okay, this is how we can make this affordable. We cannot compromise on this, but we can do it like this. So it's always finding cheaper ways of doing things, but ways which are not going to compromise on the quality. The client after a while gets what you call shoddy work. So I think that's something that I always deal with on a daily. And I also keep on learning new methods that can be used to make things, cheaper and more affordable. Yeah.
And that's a good thing to have in mind. And when somebody wants to do a quality job, and that's something I've learned too, like you do a job that when somebody looks at it, they want to know because a job will advertise for you. So like somebody will come to this building and say, wow, who did this building? And then a person would want to do the same thing. But when you do less quality work because you want to make it or about to make cheaper things like that, it's either going to cause damage to the building but also cause loss of lives because people are going to be living in there and the buildings will fall down. And those are some of the things to think about. And also always having that heart of like I want to do something I'm proud of. Like you look at something, it's like, yeah, that was my work and I'm really proud of it, which I wish everybody had the same heart like that. You had a question, and probably this question will be answered by all the things you've already talked about today, but you had a question on there. Why would somebody need a construction engineer, like a construction manager? Because like I already told you, and my knowledge is based off what I grew up seeing. Like in our villages, like, hey, njagala kuzimba wano karumu. Then they just find a guy, the local guy from the village. They just come do this, do this.
Yeah.
But why would somebody need a construction manager, and why would somebody look for Jacqueline to be their construction manager?
Well, yes. So why would you hire me to be your construction manager? So I think one of the first things is before construction could be like, njagala kunzimbira jangu ozimbe wano ne wano, but now we have to look at all the disciplines that are involved in a project. You will have architecture, you have structural engineering, you have electrical, you have mechanical, sometimes you need a surveyor. So you as a client might not be able to actually coordinate all those services. Because if a person like me is managing your project, I make sure that the electrical people are there, the plumbing people, the drainage, the architecture is being followed. So basically all of that. So you need somebody who can understand, interpret, and execute all those disciplines on a project.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you might need me for. And the other thing is material procurement. I think in most of my stories, I've tried to show you, my followers, what I do when procuring material. As a client, you might not want to go through all that, spend a day or spend 2 days buying material. And sometimes you need to know the ins and outs of what I'm buying, what will help me, how much I'm buying, am I in budget, where am I going to find the best deals. So those are some of the things that, or some of the services that I offer. And then as well as working within budget, like I said before, you don't want to have someone on site, nyongera yo blocker, nyongera yo cement, give me this is not enough. And then, you have plumbers, so many people on your side. So you need to know their work schedules, how they are working. Basically, what I offer you is peace of mind. You can go and be on the beach somewhere,
right,
and know that your project is running. Yeah. I always give my clients, financial reports and, site reports, site progress reports. So they know exactly what is happening, how much money they've spent, what material is on site, how many people have been on site, what they've done, are we behind schedule, how many days have we lost, So it's all of that. So it gives your project run smoothly and on budget. Yeah.
I think that will work really good for me because that's something like I hate when I'm doing a project and I like to plan ahead of time. Like, this is what we're gonna do. This is what I mean. Sometimes there's some unavoidable things that happen, but the constant, hey, I'm a block at a gamma, hey, Twitter game a block, I'm a trip, like things like that mess with my head. Like, I just want to plan for something, and like, but I mean, like I said, there's some situations where you can't avoid it, something happened, but that's really good for somebody. Like you said, you can go have a peace of mind while your construction is going on, and taking place. So anybody out there that's listening to this podcast, especially people in Uganda that would want something like that to be done for them, here is Jackie, and she will help you with all that. How can people find you? I know you have a phone number on Instagram, but how can people connect with you, especially the people who are in Uganda, if they have like a business or they need help or anything?
Yes, they can always, that's my direct line. So they can always send me a WhatsApp or give me a call or even send me a DM on Instagram. And we can always connect and discuss further on what is needed and what the expectations are and what they need help with. Yes. I always give out free advice. So
actually,
they can always reach out.
They have to pay for consultation. You should put their consultation fee, like, hey. But this works better for even the people that were summers or us who are in America. Like, if you want to build your house in Uganda and you can't fly every day to go check on your building, like, this is a great opportunity to have somebody like. So it's not only for the people who are in Uganda, but like my fellow Basamas, people who are in America. I'm not gonna start mentioning names, but I want they can reach out to you and you help them build their houses in Uganda. So yeah, this second segment, I usually like to sum it up and just ask a few personal questions. They might not be in like what we're talking about your career, or just personal, to get the listeners to get to connect with you. I usually do this in the first segment, but then for yours I did it the opposite. Like, we talked a lot of like what you do in the first segment. But I meant to ask you at the beginning, like, you talked about your family. Do you have any siblings, and how many siblings do you have?
I have 2 brothers and 1 sister.
And what position are you in that?
3.
You're the second last?
No, the first.
Oh, you're the
I'm
first.
the
Okay.
firstborn.
Okay. Some of the other questions I like to ask, you've been in this field. What some advice would you give to a young girl out there that is trying to do something, she's scared. Like these are not our jobs, like these are men jobs. What advice would you give a young girl who looks up to you in your footsteps?
Mm-hmm. I think the first thing that I would tell them is number one, to believe in themselves. You have to believe in yourself because there is a lot of criticism that's going to come every day.
Mhm.
More so if you're female, the level of criticism you'll get will be like double what a man would get. So you have to believe in yourself. You have to learn how to stand up for yourself. And I think the second thing I would advise them to do is to get a mentor. You can't get through this without a mentor. And that's something that I can't stress enough. You need another person to hold your hand, to encourage you, somebody to talk to who's been in the field before, because not everything is as it seems. It might, look down on paper, this is the path that you take, but actually it might not be. So you always have to get a mentor. Then the third thing is you have to be open to learning. Learning never stops here. It's the order of the day. You have to keep on learning and you have to have humility. Humility is something that would open doors for you, and you'll be able to walk into spaces if you have humility. You can't go around bragging, this, I've done this. No. And the other thing is to keep on going regardless. Keep
Mhm.
on going. Every day you literally have someone putting you down. You haven't done well enough. You haven't done good enough, but you just have to keep on going. So yeah, those are some of the things that I would advise them to do.
That's good. And yeah, I like to ask people these questions because there's a lot of people that need that reminder, and maybe that reminder will be a turning point for their lives and seeing that. And also like your hard work, like even to me, I just like, yeah, there's somebody there like working hard and love your job and love what you do. And that's always another point. Like when you love what you do, it helps you to come up with different ideas on how to grow and how to make yourself like better. So that's the other thing I'll add on to that is like do something you love, because most times we do something that we are forced to do and we don't put
Mhm.
in all our heart in doing that. They don't come out great. What has been a life lesson that you've learned in life to
Mm.
this point?
I think one of the toughest lessons that I've learned that probably have nothing to do with engineering
Mhm.
is that you cannot love another person into loving you.
Yeah.
So that's one of those lessons that I've really learned. And it's changed my life a lot. Yeah, it taught me how to love myself, you know, it's helped me be more confident of myself and learn who I am and accept myself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to tell us childhood begins at home, and we never knew what that like for some people never knew what that meant. But that says it starts with you and it starts with your home, then you can take it to somewhere else. What gets you excited about life? What's something that gets you excited about life?
Hmm. I would say basically excellence gets me excited
Yeah.
about life. I try my level best. It actually gives me sleepless nights if I'm not trying to be excellent at something. So excellence pushes me every single day, every single day. Yeah.
That's really good. And yeah, and that's one of the reasons I like asking that question to just hear different ideas about what people say. But yeah, excellence is really good. I love excellence too. But also failing, I wouldn't say it's good, but I like it to be part of my life because then that motivates you to come back stronger. And
Mm-hmm.
today I shared something that says, to every setback, there's a comeback. And to every loss, there's a gain. Every failure, there's a win. So that opposite of each other, like they help you. My final question, this is a signature question that I ask everybody I host on the podcast. Who would you like to see on my podcast next? And you're gonna have to help me find the person to come on the podcast to talk about their career, talk about their life, talk about anything. Like literally, we can just sit down and talk about anything. Like you've witnessed this today, called you. I didn't even tell you, hey, I'm gonna ask you about this, but just sit down and have a conversation. It can be on whatever they do, it can be about their lives, it can be a story, it can be motivation, anything. So who is that person that you would want to see on the podcast? And you'll have the task to connect them to me to be on the podcast.
I think I'd love to have I never thought of this before, but I have a mentor, my mentor. Oh, she's called Sylvia. She's mentored so many young women like myself in engineering, and she's held our hands. A number of people. She's really helped so many young women in this field. So she's one of the people that I would love to hear on this podcast. Can I say it too?
Yeah. You can give me two.
Yeah, then the other person that I'm such a big fan of is Nyonyozi Prim.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Actually,
love
Nyanyo
yeah.
Prem, I know her, and I think we connected a few times ago, and I've never requested her to be on a podcast, but I've watched their podcast too. There are three ladies that do the podcast, the Unpopular
Popular.
Opinion. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I've watched them. It's really interesting, and I love all of them what they do. But yeah, it would be cool to talk to her. I've followed her on her Instagram, and she's a person who would be interesting to talk to her. But yeah, if you connect me to them, I also reach out to them and send a request. But after
Okay.
somebody uh if you reach out to them and tell them, hey, I recommended you to be on this podcast, and I'll reach out to them, send them an email or whatever the way they prefer receiving messages. But anyway, I am thankful that I've had you on the podcast to talk about what you do. Um, so maybe somebody, a young girl somewhere, will get inspired by what you do and how you chose this to be your job, and hearing through your story and what you've done. So maybe it will inspire them. Is there any other final word like you want to say to the listeners and to anybody out there listening?
Yes, I do. Thank you to everyone who's followed me, everyone who has encouraged me. I've got so many people encouraging me that, they'd like to hear more. So I'm very grateful for everyone who's received me well and encouraged me, and the people who've trusted me with their projects straight off the internet. I'm so grateful. And to, my family, they've been so supportive. And my husband, he's been such a great support. He's the one that takes all those videos that you see of me
Oh, nice.
sometimes. So, and yeah, listens to all the complaints and every day all this happened. So he's been such an amazing support. Like I wouldn't trade that for anything. I've been so grateful to him. And my family, who usually is with me on the weekends when I'm working on different sites and projects, and they come with me. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for the gift of family. And yeah, thankful for work. And thank you too for reaching out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, me? I mean, I have like 0 followers on
Yeah.
here.
A lot of
So I'm
people
so
actually,
grateful.
I'm glad you shared that. I'm glad you mentioned that, because to me personally, and one guy talked about this episode it's going to come out. He mentioned that numbers doesn't mean it's a good. He was referring to a podcast, but he said numbers doesn't mean it's a good podcast. It's the impact. If you have only 2 followers, and those followers have been impacted by the guests you bring and what the words you say on the podcast, you've achieved your goal. But the numbers doesn't mean it's a good podcast. So when you say, like, even if I don't look at I mean, I don't look at what people, how many followers they have, what's the status of them, are they celebrities, are they nah, that's not the purpose of my podcast, because I know how it feels to be not seen by anybody. Like most people now, it's just saying like, oh, I want this celebrity to build my podcast because then it will build a podcast. But for me, I'm full of like a story. Like I want to inspire another person. And I know after looking at your Instagram, I'm like, yeah, how hard work and how determination will inspire somebody else. And that's what I was looking at. I didn't look at, I still even don't know how many people you have on, because that's not what I looked at. My eyes just went to what you do and your hard work, and that's what I looked at to just bring you here. Because and that's the one thing I said at the beginning is that's the reason why I was like, I need to sit down and talk to her. So, but I mean, yeah, having a good following is not bad, having a follower is not bad, but like for me, that's not something I look at. I look at just having a conversation and just impacting like somebody's life.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No problem. Hopefully we can do another one another time and just talk and talk and talk and learn about construction and all that stuff. All right, bye.
Okay, Bonnie, thank you so much. Have a
Hey there, this is Bonnie Kibuka, the host of the Ugandan Boy Talk Show. Thanks for watching and listening to my podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with a friend and recommend somebody to this podcast. Don't forget to leave a feedback on this podcast because that's how we grow. And also don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. Join us on our social media platforms on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So we'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much and be blessed.